be brought to the glory of his resurrection through the same Christ our Lord. Amen.
RPN Radio Philippines Network, Radyo Ronda, DZKI-IRIGA, member kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
CNN Philippines Hour sa RPN-DZKI-IRIGA, alas 6 hasta alas 7 ng manggi, Lunes hanggang Biyernes. CNN Philippines Hour.
Under Alert Level 1, business owners face the rising prices of fuel and basic commodities. The Labor Department says a government intervention...
More on incentivizing those enterprises who are reopening during this recovery period, and also at the same time saving and preserving the existing employment.
The Labor Department proposes a 24 billion worth of wage subsidy for 1 million minimum wage earners. The department says this is not an additional cash incentive but a tool to help employers sustain their businesses.
Sabihin natin 8,000, okay? Tapos 14,000 yung monthly pay. So yung 14,000 minus the 8,000, yun yung magiging counterpart ni establishments. Kumbaga may share ang government and then may share ang establishments.
DOLE eyes to roll out the wage subsidy program from April to June 2022. Beneficiaries will come from the agency's database.
Ang priority pa rin natin, Kristan, would be the micro, small, and medium enterprises who have been badly affected.
While owners of small businesses welcome the proposal, they say it is more of a temporary relief measure.
Kahit na wala ng subsidy, walang tulong na ibibigay, basta babaan, hindi dapat tumaas ang mga presyo ng gasolina eh.
Yung mga sir, malilit na business na katulad namin, businesses, kasi yung mga malalaking business, kaya naman nilang kaya naman nilang sustentuhan yung kanilang mga empleyado eh.
The wage subsidy proposal is up for President Rodrigo Duterte's approval since the proposed budget will come from his office's contingency funds. Malacanang has yet to announce the President's decision. Tristan Udalo, CNN Philippines.
It is unclear yet when the government will begin distributing the 200 peso monthly cash aid for the poorest households. President Duterte yesterday approved the measure as one way to cope with rising prices of goods and fuel. But is 200 pesos really enough? Our Paige Javier finds out.
The cheapest rice you can buy is at 37 pesos per kilo. Galunggong, which has long dropped its image as the poor man's fish, goes for 100 per half kilo. Tilapia is at 60. Vegetables aren't cheap either. Eggplant, for example, sells for 80 pesos a kilo. Other food items often seen on the poor man's table, like noodles and sardines, are not cheap as well. Then there's cooking oil and gas, and other things you need to prepare a meal. If you plan to eat at a karinderya, rice goes for 10 pesos a cup, while viands range from 25 to 80 pesos per serving. That's good for one person. These prices are expected to go up as fuel costs continue to soar. The government says it will help the public, especially the poor, cope with a 200 peso monthly subsidy. This roughly translates to 1 meal a month for a family of 5. For 52-year-old Emilita Abesha, this is definitely not enough.
Kulang talaga yun sa 200. Isipin mo ilan kami kumakain, siyam. Wala na kami mabili, kahit sa tuyo na lang, hirapan pa kami.
Abesha's 8-person household mostly relies on conditional cash grants. She says expenses piled up after the death of their only breadwinner. It's a different story for 57-year-old Marlene Negru, who welcomes the extra help. She spends most of the cash grants on food.
Makakatulong din siya, dagdag. Kahit papano, kung may maidadagdag pa sila, malaking pasalamat din. Babaan na lang siguro yung mga presyo, wag nang masyadong mataas.
Economic managers proposed the 200 peso aid instead of suspending the excise tax on fuel.
We realize that this is not enough, but this is what we can afford as of this time. And to make sure that our finances going forward, and especially for the next administration, are still going to be healthy.
There's no timeline yet on the distribution of the additional assistance, pending guidelines from the Budget Department. While they wait, beneficiaries will have to find other sources and make ends meet. Paige Javier, CNN Philippines.
An additional 15 pesos in the base fare, that's what app-based Transport Network Vehicle Service or TNVS drivers and operators have been appealing to the government for since late last year. But they say they need the increase now more than ever. Here's Amor Santos with the story.
These days, TNVS driver Michael Celes only goes home to sleep to keep up with the rising fuel costs.
Sagad-sagaran kasi, lalabas ako ng madaling araw ng alas 4. Usually dati, 6 sa bahay na ako 14 hours. Ngayon, sumasagad hanggang alas 12 para madagdagan lang yung kita. 500 to 600, mga ganun na lang. Kasi yung 600, 400, 500 doon, tatabi mo para sa hulog sa sasakyan.
Transport Network Vehicle Service drivers and operators are now calling on the government to increase their base fare by 15 pesos or from 40 pesos to 55 pesos. They filed a petition in November. The LTFRB held the first hearing months later on March 8th. The group TNVS Community now appeals for swifter proceedings, citing the weekly fuel price hikes.
Ongoing pa po yung negotiation at wala pa pong linaw kung hanggang saan ang kayang ibigay ng gobyerno.
Nag-arrive po kami sa 15 pesos with the consideration of yung mga maintenance, with the consideration of gaano kahaba ang itinatakbo ng isang driver sa isang araw, gaano din po kalaki ang gasolinang kinukonsumo nila, at gaano din po sila naapektuhan ng pandemya.
Earlier, 4 transport groups set aside their petition for a 5 peso jeepney fare hike as the government promised to double the fuel subsidy and expand the service contracting program. For the TNVS community, these are band-aid solutions.
Kaya po yung 6,500, pag binigay sa amin ng isang buwan, 2 buwan, hindi po makakasapat. Yung 15 pesos po na hinihiling namin, ito po, long-term po ito
The LTFRB said all jeepney drivers with existing Pantawid Pasada cards will receive the fuel subsidies until Friday. Other drivers have to wait a bit longer, but the government targets to complete the payout within the month. The 6,500 peso fuel subsidy may be a small amount, but for TNVS drivers, it means spending less time on the road and more with their families.
Sa LTFRB, inaasahan namin. Sabi naman nila na meron naman daw, so sana meron.
Amor Santos, CNN Philippines.
On this day 2 years ago, the island of Luzon, home to over 50 million people, was placed on lockdown to contain the spread of COVID-19. President Rodrigo Duterte called it an enhanced community quarantine or ECQ and deployed uniformed personnel to man borders across 8 regions. The months that followed cost the economy 4.3 trillion pesos and pushed more Filipinos into poverty and hunger. 2 years later, no more checkpoints, just vaccination cards and a nationwide push for more people to get immunized and boosted. And as Caroline Bonkin reports, it's again starting to get more fun in the Philippines.
For the first time this pandemic, Norvin Balog and his friends are out swimming. From Laguna, they headed to San Juan, Batangas on its first week under the lowest alert level.
Tinake opportunity na rin po namin para makapag-outing po kasi once in a lifetime na rin po kasi hindi naman po natin alam mo yung magiging future.
They're just among many who are finally having a fun summer this pandemic. This is the public beach in La Ia, San Juan, Batangas. And this past weekends, this has been jam-packed with tourists. And in the coming weeks this summer, more visitors are expected as many restrictions have loosened up.
Right now, we can safely say na talagang we are slowly getting back to normal.
Under Alert Level 1, resorts no longer require antigen tests, only that visitors should be vaccinated. Transportation and establishment capacities can be maxed, and children may come as long as they're accompanied by vaccinated adults. Pre-booking is advised. San Juan, Batangas has 0 COVID cases for almost a month now, and they want to keep it that way as local tourism bounces back.
They need to have the booking confirmation ahead of time kasi para ma-avoid natin yung resort hopping. Because we all know, nandito pa kasi si COVID, hindi pa sila totally wala, hindi natin alam kung sino ang infected at hindi.
Hotels and resorts, our tourism office conducts regular inspections and monitoring para po ma-ensure yung nandun pa rin, nai-implement pa rin yung basic nating health and safety protocols.
As tourists return, so do 1,000 resort employees laid off in 2020, like Jan Rodriguez. In between jobs, he sold ceramic pots to get by.
Mahirap ang sitwasyon kasi nga wala kang trabaho, kailangan mong kumayod, kailangan mo talaga maghanap buhay.
Gliceria, who has been manning a beach resort, is much grateful.
Ay kami po ibali 2 taong buong hindi po kami nakita. Talagang napakahirap po. Dahil dito po naman naaasa din ang aming mga pamilya.
Everyone here has high hopes that things are finally turning around. Caroline Bongkin, CNN Philippines, Batangas.
Straight ahead, economic managers are proposing a 4-day work week to help employees and employers save up on gas and electricity. And she may have failed to bring home the Blue Crown, but Tracy Maureen Perez still made the country proud. Highlights of Miss World 2021 here on CNN Philippines. Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. I'm Pia Hontiveros. The National Economic and Development Authority is proposing a 4-day work week to help manage the economy and amid rising prices of fuel and commodities. But as Stanley Gaheta tells us, some labor groups and companies say the measure is not enough.
The government's economic planning chief points out the benefits of a shorter work week at a time of rising costs triggered by expensive fuel.
Magtatrabaho pa rin po ang bawat Pilipino na 40 hours per day. Pero imbis na sa 5 araw ay 4 na araw. Pero imbis na 8 oras kada araw, magiging 10 oras kada araw.
The Energy Department says the 4-day work week can help conserve energy.
Doon naman sa ating fuel consumption, at least 15% yung matitipid. These figures are based on government the data for government offices and facilities.
There were similar proposals before the pandemic to ease heavy traffic. Authorities say a shorter work week will allow savings amid the rising cost of basic goods and commodities and fuel. In the meantime, the Labor Department says an adjusted work schedule should be a management discretion and not mandatory. A labor official says a flexible work scheme is in line with the labor code and there's no need for a new law to carry it out.
Ngayon po, tumataas po ang presyo ng gasolina. Pwede po silang mag-implement ng compressed work week. Pwede po silang mag-implement ng flexible work arrangement katulad po ng 4-day work.
On the other hand, some labor groups believe the country needs a holistic response, including an alternative to the oil deregulation law, the need for financial aid, wage increases, and price controls. The Trade Union Congress of the Philippines and Associated Labor Unions say these concerns should go through consultations with labor management councils, trade unions, and the workers themselves. Second, they must be carried out voluntarily. And third, there must be a written agreement between labor and management.
We are asking today for the President to listen to the workers, to get the perspective of the workers' plight.
Nasa naman yung ambag ng employers.
Protektado ang 8 oras na trabaho ng isang manggagawa. Hindi mo pwedeng galawin yan basta-basta.
An employers group also doesn't believe the scheme would save on resources and energy since many companies operate 24/7.
The trend worldwide now is reduction of working hours, not prolonging it. No? Okay? Yung efficiency will suffer, tapos yung sinasabing fuel savings, solve na lang nila yung traffic tsaka yung mass transportation.
Stanley Gaete, CNN Philippines.
What do some presidential candidates think of the proposed 4-day work week, and what are their proposals to cushion the impact of the oil price hike? George Cahilas reports.
Presidential aspirant Senator Panfilo Lacson supports NEDA's proposal to implement a 4-day work week. He said this is a good suggestion, but only if workers will be well compensated for the extended hours that they will render. Aside from saving fuel, Lacson says it is also an additional day that may be spent with the family.
Maganda yun kasi at least matitipid na yung gasolina yung Friday hanggang Sunday. O at least yung Friday, mababawas yung 1 day. So ano naman yung cost noon sa common employees? Siyempre, matagal sa opisina, but then he or she can spend more time with the family pagdating noon ng Friday towards the weekend.
Senator Manny Pacquiao, meanwhile, is pushing for the urgent convening of a special session of Congress so lawmakers can sit down and address the increasing prices of fuel. He also acknowledges the fact that the government cannot just simply suspend excise tax on oil, but he wants the fund collected be used immediately.
Kailangan maglaan ang pamahalaan ng pundo at gamitin ang excise tax na nakulikta para mabigyan natin ng ayuda ang mga nasa transport sector.
Labor leader Leody de Guzman is proposing another solution, that is to repeal the oil deregulation law. He also wants the government to secure another oil company.
Mag-imbak na rin o magkaroon na ng parabang sariling gasolinahan ang ating pamahalaan. Nang sa ganon, siya magtatakda ng tamang presyong ibebenta ng iba't iba pang player ng petrolyo.
George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Meanwhile, Leody de Guzman says NEDA's proposed 4-day work week might lead to a decrease in wages. Well, heading to the campaign trail now, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno woos voters in the Visayas, where he took a swipe at candidates who skipped debates, while Vice President Leni Robredo visited the far-flung island province of Basilan. Paulo Barcelon has the details.
2 days into Comelec's first presidential debate, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno says he's reviewing some important issues while campaigning in the Visayas. Moreno reiterates that he will present himself as an applicant who will convince the public, his would-be employer, to hire him. As a voter, the mayor says he won't vote for anyone who's not willing to show up in the debate.
Tapos pag may mga kaso ka pa, no? Tapos napatunayang may sala ka. O kailangan patunayan mo, nagbagong buhay ka na ba?
Former Senator Bongbong Marcos is the only presidential candidate who won't be joining this weekend's debate. He also did not participate in CNN Philippines debate in February, but has attended one hosted by SMNI and granted several one-on-one interviews. Marcos was campaigning in Bataan on Thursday, where he received the endorsement of Governor Albert Garcia. Vice President Leni Robredo, meanwhile, is in Basilan. She arrived in the island province on Wednesday night via a fishing boat from Zamboanga. After a motorcade, she held a campaign rally, which, according to the organizers, was attended by some 45,000 spectators. Robredo was also officially endorsed by Basilan Representative Mujib Hataman.
Dahil malayo ang Basilan, mahirap pumunta, paminsan ang iba nadadala pa sa mga kwento na delikado, pero pag gusto, maraming paraan, pag ayaw, maraming dahilan.
Paulo Barcelon, CNN Philippines.
Senator Amy Marcos accuses poll technology provider Smartmatic of data security breach. The sister of presidential candidate Bongbong Marcos says the security breach supposedly happened when a contractual worker took out a work laptop and leaked its contents to a hacker group. The allegation comes months after a report by the Manila Bulletin claimed Comlex servers were hacked, which the poll body repeatedly denied.
Nasa Facebook makikita ninyo sa isang XSOS na nasa Facebook, andun nakalatag kung ano-anong informasyon. May mga password, user word, sabi nila bulok na at non-usable, but nevertheless, the wealth of detail and the depth of knowledge is a little bit alarming.
Comlex and Smartmatic both insist no such breach happened.
Anyone can make this document and post it on Facebook and say that this can possibly affect the 2022 elections. As far as Smartmatic is concerned po, especially kung ang pag-uusapan natin ay personal data breach na sinasabi na magkakaroon posible na epekto sa 2022 national and local elections, affirmatively, wala po. Wala pong ganyan.
From the very beginning, sinasabi natin that COMELEC is fully in charge of the elections. We are confident that even in this particular case, walang naganap na hacking, and therefore we feel that there will be no impact of that alleged hacking on the election results for 2022.
The National Bureau of Investigation is looking into the incident. Coming up on Newsnight, the schedule of UAAP men's basketball games is out, and it looks like we'll be seeing more action on the hard court each day. Plus, we bring you the highlights of today's Miss World pageant. Stay tuned to CNN Philippines. Welcome back to CNN Philippines. Trouble for some sports bodies. In a special meeting, the Philippine Olympic Committee voted to suspend PATAFA and the Philippine Tennis Association for 90 days. The POC says PATAFA failed to, quote, serve its purpose as a national sports association, and it's amid its ongoing row with pole vaulter EJ Obiena. If the suspension is ratified on March 30, PATAFA will not have authority over the national team for the Southeast Asian Games, and Obiena may be able to defend his title. PhilTA, meanwhile, was suspended for non-compliance to an International Tennis Federation order to hold elections for new board members. Get ready to witness 4 men's basketball games per day, thrice a week this UAAP season. This means all 8 teams get to play each day at the Mall of Asia Arena in Pasay City. In previous seasons, there were usually just 2 or 3 games a day. Matches begin on March 26, Saturday, and these are set just 3 hours apart. The Ateneo Blue Eagles will begin their bid for a 4th consecutive title as they face the UP Fighting Maroons for the season 84 opener. You can view the full schedule of first-round games on our social media platforms. Pageant news now. The race for the Blue Crown has ended with Poland taking the 2021 Miss World title. But as a pageant analyst says, the Philippines' bet Tracy Maureen Perez also put up a good fight. Pauline Versosa gives us details.
From 97 delegates, it was just down to the top 40 candidates vying for the 70th Miss World crown in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Among them, the Philippines' very own bet, Tracy Maureen Perez, who secured her spot as one of the winners of the pre-pageant head-to-head challenge. She was also a finalist of the Beauty with a Purpose program with her project Para Kay Nanay, which aims to empower single mothers. An early pageant favorite, the 28-year-old stunner from Cebu dazzled in blue, earning her a spot in the top 13. And during a short Q&A, Perez imparted how she can use her journey to inspire others.
If I told any of you my life story, my experiences, you would also probably wonder, how in the world did she get here? Well, you know what? I'm so much bigger. I'm so much stronger than all of the unfortunate things that had happened to me. And I know in my heart that all those experiences led me to this very day, to this very stage. And I want people to see me, to see themselves in me, and be reminded that what we go through in life should never dictate, well, where we'll ever be.
Perez, however, ended her quest there as she failed to advance to the top 6. Poland's Karolina Bielawska eventually took home the much-coveted Blue Crown and Miss World title, ending a 33-year drought for her country. Shri Saini of United States was hailed first runner-up, while Olivia Yasse from Ivory Coast was named second runner-up. Perez may not have taken home the elusive crown, but her top 13 finish is the Philippines' highest placement since 2016.
When she spoke in the Q&A, top of Q&A, I thought she would an easy shoe-in, the top 6, because she told her life story in that 30-second answer. She was perfect. Her styling was perfect nung evening gown. Tapos nung opening segment, nung Dances of the World or yung opening segment nila, she was glowing in that national costume of Axel K. So there's nothing I would have wanted her to change. Okay. She was really meant for that moment, and unfortunately, it did not resonate well with the judges. As I've been saying, recalibrate tayo ng strategies for the next few years.
Fans took to social media to congratulate the beauty queen for representing the country well, including 2013 Miss World Megan Young, who remains to be the country's only title holder in history. Pauline Versosa, CNN Philippines.
Relive highlights from Coronation Night with the Miss World pageant replay later at 10 p.m. And that is it for tonight. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Hontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Marcos and running mate Sara Duterte. Frequent debate skippers Bongbong Marcos and running mate Sara Duterte. No show at the CNN Philippines presidential and vice presidential debates over the weekend. Many were disappointed but not surprised. One vice presidential candidate did not take the sitting down and called the absent tandem cowards.
The main problem that we face is the Marcos Duterte tandem. No? And I think that they just spat on the face of the Filipino people, telling them, you're not worth my giving you our programs because they have our programs.
In this country where voters are more swayed by candidates' popularity than their platforms, do debates really matter, or are they futile attempts to bask in what's left of democracy's former glory? Because as far as surveys are concerned, the Marcos Duterte tandem are leading the race to Malacanang. They say numbers do not lie, but how close or far are these figures from the reality on the ground? Good evening, I'm Pia Hontiveros. Welcome to your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. Our guests, political analyst Dindo Manhit and Octa Research fellow Guido David, joining us both via Zoom. Thank you very much, Guido and Dindo, and I'm really glad you're here on the show today. We're going to talk about, syempre, debates and surveys. So let's begin with this. The question we need to tackle first is, will or does performance in a debate impact on survey rankings? Just over the weekend, we had the CNN Philippines vice presidential debate on Saturday, February 26, and the presidential debate on February 27, Sunday. When we talk about the surveys, we're talking about, well, let's call it now a pre-debate survey. We had the January 19 to 24 pulsation. We're going to bring it up on your screens in just a bit. BBM leading by 60, by many miles, not just by a mile, many miles, 60%, 60%. Leni Robredo coming in second with 16%, 16%. We're going to bring that up, the graphics, in just a while. Also, the February 8 Octa survey. This is February 12 to 17 survey of Octa. Day 5 of the campaign. Kasi nag-umpisa ang kampanya, national campaign, February 8. So Octa's February 12 to 17 survey shows BBM at 55%, Leni Robredo at 15%. For VP Octa, Sara Duterte 43%, Tito Soto 33%. The Lilo survey also showing BBM at 64%, Leni at 16%. Ang haba ng intro. But again, Dindo and Guido, so the question is, will or does performance in a debate impact will it impact on survey rankings? Dindo?
Of course, debates are very important in a democratic process because it allows us to understand the positions of major candidates, and not only the positions, but really what is in their heart.
All right, I think we have a little bit of a technical internet problem, perhaps, with Dindo Manhit. Let's go to Guido David of Octa. Guido?
Yes, hi, good evening, Pia, and thank you for the invitation. And I agree with Professor Dindo that debates are important, but we have to highlight that debates are important if the public deems that platforms are important for the basis of choosing their candidates. And if we compare it, for example, to the U.S., the debates are really, it could be a turning point in a campaign because, that's when platforms and, issues are brought up. And but of course, I can't speak for the public in general. My personal belief is that debates are important for us to identify the candidates that we want to vote on, because how well do we know candidates? I mean, when we conduct surveys frequently, it shows that a lot of Filipinos don't actually know a lot of the other candidates, And this is a time for us to discover, some other candidates that we don't know about, and at least hear what their platform and personal, let's say principles, ideology are.
So debates are important so that we can find out, we can dissect the platforms of the candidates. SMNI debate. It's not clear if he's going to be joining the COMELEC debates either, but he is, it looks like he's the runaway winner in the surveys.
Part of Senator Mark, he's trying to communicate and stepping beyond really mainstream media. And because what is unique in the 2022 election is really the rise of media, social media, as a second source of news or information, as they prefer or they decide who their choices are for president. Studies have shown that it's even overtaken radio. So I think Senator Marcos has realized that there is a way to communicate directly to voters, avoiding either the discipline of fact-checking or editorial control of news, mainstream news. So he's going straight to the voters through social media.
So what he's saying is that I don't need the debates. With the exception of the SMNI survey, I don't need the debates. I'll go straight to the people. I'll campaign on the ground on Sunday during the CNN Philippines presidential debate. He was in Pangasinan.
Yeah. So it depends on mainstream media that are very important in any functioning democracy to really define and maybe push major candidates, in this case, leading candidates, to take seriously, maybe not specific debate, but maybe even at least the COMELEC debates, whereby there will be media covering them.
Okay. Last week, last Tuesday, I was speaking to Coco Pimentel, and we were talking about the surveys. And of course, Manny Pacquiao not doing very well, as the rest of the candidates, no? Number 2, 3, and 4, and 5. And Coco was saying that kasi pandemic survey ito eh. So that will explain kung bakit mababa ang ranking ng mga kandidato nila, kung bakit nangunguna si BBM. What is the truth on that, Guido? Octadas surveys, pandemic survey ba? Talaga nagbabago ba talaga ang ihip ng hangin dahil sa pandemya? Ano ba talaga, Guido?
Well, Pia, it's not about the fact na yung ihip ng hangin ay nagbago. I think it's, of course, I know it's a figure of speech. But I think it's because of the Omicron surge, for example, which hit our country in January. This pushed back the timeline for the campaign period. So it could have started, it was starting, probably late December, the pre-campaign period, but it should have started in January, but it pushed it back 1 month. And although our survey was conducted February 12 to 17, you could say that it was just fresh off the start of the campaign period. And that's why, we have to, again, remind the public who are looking at the survey results that this is just a snapshot of the sentiment of the surveyed respondents at the time. And there may still be changes. We can't rule that out. And that's why we're, looking forward to the survey results this coming March. So what I'm basically saying is that because the campaign period just started, it may not have changed the pre-campaign numbers that we were seeing last year.
When are you going to do your survey in March, Guido?
Well, I have to check with the team, but it would be sometime mid to late March. And I think the big two firms, SWS and Pulse Asia, will probably have surveys sometime in March as well, probably, probably this around this time.
Halos sabay na rin yon. If you say mid to late March, halos sabay na rin yon sa local campaign. Candidates like to say, well, the candidates na medyo nangungulelat, for lack of a better word, sa surveys, they like to say na yung survey rankings don't bother them because the only survey that matters is the one on election day, no? Pero kapag sila naman ang number one sa kahit anong survey, paniwalang-paniwala naman sila. Lalo na, and I asked this of Coco lalo na kunyari in-house survey sila, tapos number one sila, they believe. How are candidates supposed to, react when media asks them in public na, well, what do you think of this? You're number 2, 3, or a far second or a far third. Tama ba yung mga sagot nilang yon?
I don't really think so, Pia. No? At the end of the day, you have covered elections after elections. You've seen how credible survey firms that follows the science, the qualitative approach to this type of study has reflected we saw in actual election day. It could be what some would say political spin, or just to not let their followers feel low about where they stand. But let's accept it. These campaigns have their own surveys, and I don't think it's different from a respected, science-driven, scientific approach to getting the pulse, getting the snapshot of the preferences of the public. So they are seeing what we are seeing, which is being shown to us, like the Okta research or what you've said earlier, the Pulse research. This is done in a way that follows certain high standards of statistical methods, scientific methods of generating preferences. It will look the same. So I don't know why they like to say that instead of accepting it. But they need to work hard. They need to convert. They need to reach out to more voters to transfer the votes or convert towards their campaign.
In other words, huwag silang in denial, no, Dindo?
Yes.
Okay. Kaya pa bang humabol ng iba? That's the big question mark. We'll be back after a quick break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. This is Politics as Usual. Still with us, political analyst Dino Manhit and Okta Research fellow Guido David. We're talking about debates and surveys. The question before the break was, kaya pa bang humabol ng iba? Because, for example, Lenny's campaign will say, uy, nag-plus 1%. No? Pero ang layo ni BBM kasi 40 percentage points ahead si Bongbong Marcos as far as the Okta Research survey is concerned. Pulse Asia, 44%. Kaya pa bang humabol, Dido?
It reminds me of where we were in previous presidential election. When you look at the January, February surveys of 2000.
Naku, sayang. Medyo may problema tayo sa signal ni Dido. We're going to get back to him in just a bit. But before that, let's go first to Guido David, who is also joining us via Zoom. Guido, ano bang mga statistical probabilities or improbabilities, if I might say so, for yung, kunyari, si Lenny, na humabol pa siya kay BBM?
Yes, Pia. And I think what Professor Dindo was about to say was that if we're looking at past election results, sometimes there's still a leading candidate even until mga February or even March can still be overtaken. In fact, in 2016, I'm just looking at the survey results, which seem to be fairly reliable. Senator Grace Poe was leading President Duterte at that time. Of course, the margin was close. And then if we're looking also at Vice President Lenny's numbers for the vice presidential candidacy in 2016, she was also, I think, behind two other candidates at this time of the year. So, you can say na tapos ng laban. And as they say, that the true survey, the real survey, will be done on May 9th. Pero, of course, if we are looking at these numbers, we have to say na, we have to be honest na their work is cut out for them. They have to work really hard to get their numbers higher if they want to catch up the leading candidate. For vice president, it's much closer. Pero for president, it's you can say tapos na, but like I said, they have to work hard at it.
Pero ano yung lamang ni Grace Poe noong 2016? Like you said, hindi rin ganong kalaki. Not like, I mean, it's not like this. It's 40 to 40 percentage points. Diba?
Yes, yes. In fact, it was probably less than 5% yung lamang ni Senator Grace po at that time. But still, the point was that, there could still be some changes. Yes, 45% is a really, overwhelming margin of, of lead. But there could still be, there are sometimes inflection points in a campaign period, and a certain event may, cause certain changes. We don't know if that will happen. So I think, the last thing that they'd want to do is give up, or at least, just maintain status quo. I mean, kumbaga, if like playing a game of basketball, kung malaking lead ng kalaban mo by the second or third quarter, you really have to push hard. You can't just, play your standard game.
Parang naalala ko tuloy, was it More Lorenzo of the Blue Eagles many decades ago? It's only a 40-point difference. But anyway, Dindo, you were saying earlier before your internet went down, and
Yes,
and
sorry
then
about
answer na
that.
rin the question, what kind of recalibration must they do if they want to win? Because apparently something's wrong somewhere, right? I mean, they cannot say na, "De, okay kami, okay yung kampanya namin, we will overcome this like in 2016. 2016 is not 2022, right?
Yes. The reality that after a few months of actual, even unofficial campaign, right? Because we started after the filing of the candidacy, campaign should have realized that they have failed to penetrate the voters beyond maybe their bases. In the case of VP Lenny, there are those voters that maybe they have grown from 8 to 18 to even 20%. We've seen those numbers. But can they go beyond that? Because Marcos is within that 50 to 60% mark. So I really see a possibility of a Marcos landslide, or a very tight race that we will see Lenny, VP Lenny, maybe Isko, maybe gaining in their different bailiwicks. And we can see where we were in 1992, whereby former President Fidel V. Ramos won with a 24% victory. So things could happen because we are at February surveys. My analysis will be different when maybe we are in April and we still see these numbers.
About a month or two ago, I remember one of the problems, yung pinag-uusapan about the Lenny campaign was yung echo chamber, no? So parang sila-sila lang nag-uusap, sila-sila lang, yung ganun ba? Yung ba yung isang dahilan kung bakit ganito yung numbers niya, no? And what must they do, to really overcome that? Because they say that they will win. They say she will win. Well, all candidates say they'll win, no? But come on, man. This is 40%, 40 percentage points.
Every gain will be positive for them, but they really need to look at their campaign and broaden it. As I remember hearing through Pulse Asia saying that, is it possible that VP Lenny has hit a ceiling? I tend to agree, but when you hit a ceiling in a campaign, you tend to look for how do you convert in other voters, or maybe build your campaign and now stay focused on where in the 81 provinces I can build and generate enough support. No, we cannot capture 81 of these provinces. You cannot reach to everyone. Be a more targeted campaign, not simply a shotgun campaign. Where that is, it depends on the campaign itself. They have to do their own strategic arithmetic maybe and see where the votes could come from and work on that. Focus their efforts on that if they'd like to convert voters.
Very interesting term you use, strategic arithmetic. There's a lot of emotion in the campaign. Very, very pink emotion. That's not enough, right?
What you need is to really reach out where the target voters are. And in the case of the Philippines, a big percentage are those coming from social class D. These are people that needs to be communicated, but they need to be communicated in a different way. And there are means now that they can even be communicated through social media. But you have to go beyond, as you've said earlier, that echo chamber and really reach out to these voters.
About 2 months ago, I think that November, December, there was that point in the campaign, lumabas na yung mga volunteers who were saying, Alam nyo, dapat ang kausapin natin yung ating mga kasambahay, yung mga Class DE. Yung ganun ba, nakatulong ba yan sa kanila?
Any opportunity to talk, not really to look down at this social class. Why define them as kasambahay? The reality, these are Filipino voters being challenged by low income, more so now, 2 years into a pandemic where we are suffering from the economic consequences of this continuing health crisis. You cannot look down at them by basically trying to reach out to them emotionally, that maybe we can really build something together, work with a candidate that can truly be the one that can improve their lives. We have seen data that shows, and we have commissioned some questions with both Pulse Asia and Social Weather Station, that they want somebody who is pro-poor, somebody that is honest and trustworthy, somebody that is not corrupt. So can other candidates offer themselves that? Because right now it seems that is Mr. Marcos.
Yeah, pro-poor, honest, not corrupt, and if the surveys are to be believed, then people are thinking that is BBM.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
That's why.
Yeah,
because he builds his narrative on that argument. So you have to counter that narrative. You have to challenge that narrative, and maybe try to put some doubt on that narrative.
Mm-hmm. Challenging, countering, or putting doubt on that narrative, was it enough for Lenny to say, sinungaling kasi siya? Yes or no?
I'm not sure. Let's see how the voters will react to that.
Yeah. More
we can
from our
only
guests.
analyze the data that we see from legitimate surveys, but the strategy has to be built by the campaign itself.
Okay.
They
More
have
from
to
our
test
guests
it.
when we return. This is Politics as Usual. We have to take a quick break. This is the final stretch of Politics as Usual. Our guests, political analyst, Professor Dindo Manhit, and Octo Research Fellow, Guido David. Guido, some people like to say na may mga online surveys, yung mga surveys na ginagawa sa daan. Pero there are legitimate survey firms, right? So give us give people a reminder, no? Which surveys should we believe in?
Yes, and Pia, there's nothing illegal about conducting your own survey. For example, I can survey my own household or my group of friends, my students, people that I know. But when we conduct surveys like this, and this is not far from what we're seeing, for example, in Calio surveys, how representative is this of the voting population? And that's the difference between a proper methodology, which which is properly sampled, because we could take 1,000 people and survey them, but if they're from the same demographic, this will not project to the voting population, and that's why the established firms conduct face-to-face surveys. Firstly, we make sure that the respondents are registered voters and they are in the Philippines. They're not answering online from somewhere from outside the country, and that they're legitimate respondents, and that they will and because of the sampling, we can project this to the entire population and get a reasonable margin of error for the projections. So online surveys and Calio surveys will not be representative, because online sometimes you can have multiple accounts responding to the survey, and there, like I said, if it's not representative, then it may not project properly and be a good guide. I mean, and let's remember, as Professor Dindo mentioned a while ago, I mean, it's really for the end user, for the candidates themselves, so that they can recalibrate properly if they have to make adjustments to their strategies, and not just go for the status quo.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very quickly now, we have a minute to go, and my last question would be this: in the weeks preceding the deadline for filing of COCs last October, ang pinag-uusapan, what they tried to do was to unite Lenny, Isko, Manny, and Ping, and of course they didn't. No, So will it do any good now? Is it going to help them? Because if they really want to beat BBM, will it help them if they try if they do an attempt at unity now, Dindo?
Maybe it's too late for that. But I think what can be done by them collectively as individual campaigns is really to focus on who their opponents are. In this case, it's really targeting the one on top and try to counter the narratives being shared in multiple platforms, be it mainstream or social media, by Senator Marcos. And that's how they can compete. But it's too late for unity at this time.
Oo. Pero compete. Tinitira na nga nila si BBM pero ang lakas pa rin, di ba? But anyway, sige, Guido.
I don't think it's at the level whereby when you look at VP Lenny, I always say that she is the most bullied public official in social media since she left the cabinet of President Duterte. So there has to be that counter narrative.
All right, 15 seconds.
We have not seen what has transpired really. It's not happening in mainstream media, but in social media itself. So they have to look at and focus on who they need to challenge really, and that's Mr. Marcos at this time. That's why Mr. Marcos or Senator Marcos is avoiding debates.
15 seconds, sorry Guido.
Yes, well, we only have 2 months left of campaign, so they definitely have to consider their strategies carefully. And as Professor Dindo mentioned, they're probably not penetrating certain demographics as well as they should, and that is basically hurting their campaigns.
Guido, David, and Dindo Manhit, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We've been told before, don't talk politics at the dinner table or the family reunion or in Viber groups and risk digital warfare. But we can talk about it here at this table on this show, your weekly political appointment fix, politics as usual. I'm Pio Hontiveros. See you back here next Tuesday, 8:30 p.m.
On radio, DZKI-IRIGA welcomes CNN Philippines to bring you the latest news you can use, news you can trust. Listen to Newsnight, weekdays, 6 p.m.
We now go above and beyond the headlines,
followed by Med Talk, Health Talk.
We'll talk about how to keep ourselves healthy during the pandemic.
Politics as usual.
In this country, not everything really goes according to plan, and politics is, as usual,
up close and more. Catch CNN Philippines Hour on DZKI-IRIGA. Weekdays, 6 to 7 p.m.
Sa pagpili ng liderato, laging tatandaan, dapat nasa kanya lahat ng katangian na maka-Pilipinas. Taong may respeto sa buhay at pamilya, makabuluhan at matinoong pamumuhay. Siya yung makapagtataguyod ng kabutihang panlahat, di mangiiwan, makakasama ang lahat. Malinaw ang pananaw sa makabagong bukas, makatwiran at patas pakisama, at higit sa lahat, maka-Diyos siya dapat. Sa pagpili ng liderato, laging tatandaan, dapat nasa kanya lahat ng katangian, maka-Pilipinas, maka-Pilipinas.
Gabayan ng Pilipinong bumoto ng responsable. Yan naman ang aming
Panatang Maka-Pilipinas. Iboboto ko, Maka-Pilipinas. Makabayan sa lupang sinilangan.
Makataot may respeto sa buhay at pamilya.
Siya ay makatwiran at patas makisama.
Masigasig tumulong makaahon ang bawat isa.
Makatarungan, makalingat, maalalahanin sa kapwa.
Makakasama ang lahat, siya'y di mangiiwan.
Siya ay makapagtataguyod ng kabutihang panlahat.
Siya ay makabatas.
Siya ay makatotoo.
Siya ay may malinaw na pananaw para sa makabagong bukas.
Higit sa lahat, siya ay makadiyos.
Kaya't ayaw niya ng karahasan. Siya'y makakapayapaan.
Iboboto ko ang isang tao na makakalayaan.
Isang leader na makakalikasan.
Isang Pilipinong makabuluhan at matino ang pamumuhay.
Sa isip, sa salita, at sa gawa.
Gabayan ang Pilipinong bumoto ng responsable. Yan naman ang aming panata sa BBCRV.
CNN Philippines Hour sa RPN-DZKI-IRIGA alas 6 hasta alas 7 ng manggi, Lunes hanggang Biyernes. CNN Philippines Hour.